In this chapter, we are going to cover some of the successful Einstein Analytics projects practices. Now, do not forget that some of the winning factors are pretty much is the focus on adoption. Remember cases, we're going to cover it again in the next slide, but adoption is an important factor. And of course, getting the key sponsorship and support as you work with the product and the use cases and figure out the best methodology how to implement and to deliver the assets in a productionalized environment. Performance awareness has become important as more customers have used the product and as the data volume increases on every week, every month. You need to understand that you have to consider performance since day one, especially if you are doing development in the sandbox with a lower volume sample data and some other best practices when you are designing dashboards. And we're going to cover these in a bit. Always leverage the success community, the Trailblazer community, and you can always, you can easily reach product team members there, so keep that in mind. And be aware, keep up to date to the releases. There are 3 releases per year, so there are features that are being released or updates to the product. And again, from a deployment strategy, just remember if you can, for example, if you can develop in production, just develop in the separate apps, separate data flows, and then move. Or if it's sandbox, then understand you need to migrate, for example, through change sets, etc. Also remember that this tool is very good from an iterative perspective, so you can get some data sets quick out there, you can get some dashboards, and then get some feedback, and then reiterate this and deliver back again. Always team with the SFDC analyst or admin, in case you're not, because you will need some help understanding the hierarchy or how the objects relate to each other. This is where Dataset Builder, as I mentioned before, helps you to jumpstart, but it's always good to ask the experts too. Always remember cases. We introduced this way back in the first chapters, but now that we've covered a lot of the UI and the product, the collaboration features are very important. Always make it a best practice to go and let users know that they can annotate, they can set alerts and notification, and they can share. Actionability, when you create the data sets, make sure one of the last things you do is go select the fields and enable actions for them so that any user using the dashboard can click on the field and go take an action, open the record, or take a quick action. Self-service is very important. You design one dashboard for many users, for 100, 500 users, but then the users, some of the users themselves want to carry on more explorations. They can explore on the laptop or the desktop or on mobile devices, as long as you have enabled self-exploration. Embedded analytics, 100% needed for increasing adoption. Embedded analytics is very important. You want to embed the dashboards on the main objects or the common objects that the business users use, so always remember this. And from a smart design perspective, try to implement some smart design key points. For example, using the dashboards, using the pages, dynamic pages, using linked dashboards, and later on we are going to cover dynamic bindings, how to make the dashboards themselves very, very interactive. So when we talk about, again, Einstein Analytics, both a data layer and designer layer, make sure you are creating efficient data flows. Always when you create by that, use multiple data flows. Create data flows as you need, either for the dev production or for different schedules. Clean the data flows. A lot of times the customers start creating many data sets, and then after a while they kind of understand what they need, but the old nodes are there. They're still running every time you run the data flows, although you're not using them. So you can have a list, just put down a list with the data sets that are not being heavily used, and you can determine this by, for example, going to the data manager. You can go to the data here. This is the data sets. Connected data is the connected objects from here. Data sets. You can look at last queried. If they're not being used, make a list, take a list, go to the data flow that's using them, and you can locate the node and then start deleting. Of course, always back up that file before, but start deleting, because these are executing, they're costing you time and even rows, and you don't need them. Also, when you create the data sets, always remember what this data set is about. What is it mainly about? And it's okay to have multiple data sets. It's actually common. But always add the common lookup fields to that so that you can use connect data sources at the dashboard layer. If you have ETL tools, use them, especially connecting to, for example, on-prem sources. Use multiple data flows, as I mentioned, and just know the sync. Again, this should be says sync replication formally, and data flow and recipes limits. At the designer layer, it's always important to ask this dashboard is about what? So again, so you can design it in one way and link it to the other dashboards. Use connect data sources and always stop by the compare table. Compare table is very important. You can do a lot of powerful things with the compare table. Use global filters for performance and use the pages also to cut down the number of queries running every time you preview the dashboard at a certain page. Often save, because this is a browser, and if you want to version, for example, just use some versioning naming convention, 1.1, 1.2, etc. Clean up the steps. Always also take a look at the steps at the dashboard, and you can click on unused steps. Go back for a dashboard, for example. And in edit mode, you can see here unused steps. If you're not using them, just delete them because they still execute. And create the mobile layout as a last step. This way you minimize any modification, and always check it out how it looks actually on the device. And take the extra step to add JSON maps and shapes. They are very powerful. We've seen them at multiple customers, and they bring that persona or personification of the dashboard data to what the customer actually relates to or works with.